Other tracks that we see, these are large cat tracks. I'm assuming possibly lynx, just because they weren't sunk very far into the snow. We tend to see a lot of tracks in areas where there's not quite as much human traffic, especially in the spring and winter. And I've learned, put my hand or my foot or something usually by them for reference. This, I believe, is coyote tracks in the mud. Just basically take and put a filter on it on my phone, just to kind of show the details of it a little better. This is the front foot of a bear. Not too large, definitely not as large as some of them I've seen. This is a young grizzly bear. The tracks were quite small. I went out the one day, there's a denning area south of town here, and which is more towards Sparwood. And one day I saw sets from 5 different sets of tracks. There was like a sow with cubs. There was a huge set of tracks. And basically I just kind of learned that they go down there to den, and that's why I was seeing so many. This is a wolf track on the, like, gone across the road. You can see one right here on the left and then one on the right. Another bear track. This is up towards the Elk Lakes in the springtime. Grizzly, you can see the claws in the front there. Up towards the Elk Lakes, up the upper part of Ewan, tend to be more grizzly. Black bears frequent the lower area of Ewan Creek a lot, as well as down, there's a road that goes towards from Elkford to Sparwood, which is 20 minutes away, called the CNI Road, and it's kind of more towards the river bottom, and you see a lot of black bears along there too. Another wolf track, nice and clean. It had snowed and basically then went kind of really crusty, so it preserved the track really well. And a video. This is one of the trails above my house, and there's about a 4-kilometer loop that you can do on snowshoe, and it's absolutely beautiful. This is also on the same set of trails. The town of Elkford has a trail system in place. They're multi-use trails, so pedestrians, bicycles, quads, snowmobiles all use the same trail system, and it takes you from the upper level of town down to the lower level of town. Elkford is also one of the few communities around that I know of, there's a couple more, that you insure and license your vehicle, and you're not supposed to ride on the roads per se, but you can access the trail system, and basically you're legal if you cut across a road or something like that. This is Tonka walking up above the house on the trails. This is literally 5 minutes from my house. And this is my grandson walking on the same trails up above. This past year, a gentleman in town, there's snowshoe trails. There's a cross-country ski trail, but they don't want snowshoers to use it, and it goes down one side of Boyven Creek, which runs through town. So a gentleman took time to cut and brush out a snowshoe trail on the other side of the creek to access the Boyven Hut, which you'll see a picture of a bit later. So this is snowshoeing out. I came out along the left side of the creek, and there's a little bridge that goes across the creek, and then you can get up to a parking lot where you can park your vehicle. This is the Boyven Hut. So if you go up the cross-country ski trail, There's the Boyven Hut, which is approximately 4 kilometers from the trailhead, which is at the base of the Wapiti ski hill. Another 3 kilometers, 3.5 kilometers up is what's called the Wildcat Hut. And these cabins all have a stove in them. There's an outhouse beside this one. I'm not sure about the Wildcat one. I've never been up there. And from there, from the Wildcat Hut, you can access into the base of Mount Hattican and Mount Phillips. And somebody just finished taking all the deadfall and everything down from there, so you can pedal bike up there now as well. No motorized use is allowed. Another video, this was snowshoeing this past winter. And I came to this spot and cleared a little log off and just sat and just enjoyed. Boyven Creek. When the temperatures get to be approximately minus 26 in the winter, I start watching the creek. And within 2 to 3 days, it starts to ice over. And when it starts to ice over, it starts to turn turquoise blue. And it's just absolutely stunning. You don't have a very big window of time because just like all the other mountain lakes and streams, once it starts to freeze over more solid, it goes white and it's not quite as pretty. This is the Elk River running through town. It slows down and there's kind of a big wide flat space, and when the water levels drop, it just goes completely calm. And a lot of people go wading in there, or they fish. There's fishing right around the corner from there too. There's a big kind of pool that forms. This is one day at work. I went for a walk. This is 10 minutes from where I work. So up at the top of this road is one of our water towers for the water in town. But it's just an absolutely gorgeous little break in the summer. Right now it's just completely green and forested, and it is an area where I do take bear spray because you just never know what's going to be roaming around back there. This is Wildcat Charlie's cabin. Wildcat Charlie was a trapper who was in around the Elkford area in the early 1900s. And we have an annual celebration called Wildcat Days. And basically it's based on the legend of Wildcat Charlie. His name was Charlie Weigert, and he was I think he was a German citizen. I just read about this today. There's actually a Weigert Creek just south of town as well too. This little cabin has sat on the edge of the woods as long as I've been here. It has been vandalized a little bit. So far, nobody's done too much to it. And this was when I was scouting to take a photo that I had in my mind that I planned for about 2 weeks. And I waited for a night when the moon wasn't too bright and went out when it was almost minus 30, and this is what I got. The Elkford Golf Course, Mountain Meadows Golf Course. It was ranked back in the 80s as one of the best golf courses in Western Canada to play. My dad was an avid golfer, and he used to say that it was one of the most challenging courses that he had ever played on. There's a few water hazards, and if the water hazards don't get you, there's crows that'll steal your balls. And if not that, in the fall, you have elk in rut roaming all over the place. So it makes things a little challenging. I like to walk there in the springtime. It's just peaceful. You get the nice reflections in the water, and there's never anybody out there walking, and I don't quite understand why. That's a little creek that's up above where the water runs through. There's actually a pipe stuck into the creek, so I think it's back on probably hole 8 or something like that. So by the time you're there, you're thirsty and fill your water bottle, have a drink. There's a bench to sit on and relax, and before you head back up the other end. This was taken this past winter. This is along the Elk River running through town. The bridge that goes across there, in 2013, we had a really bad flood, and the water actually was hitting the bottom of the bridge, just to give you an idea how high it was. This is snowshoeing back from where I work into town. This I took the one day when I was roaming up above from work, went for a walk. This is wildflowers against the water tower at the top of that road. This area is one of my favorite places to camp. There's a big I guess you call it an oxbow, that goes around. A lot of times there's ducks, geese in this area. They're currently doing mining exploration across the road, so I think there's people camped in there right now, so you can't really have peace and quiet in there right now so much. But I did this night. This is looking north up the valley towards the Elk Lakes from just above Elkford. This is one of the biggest trees I've seen around here, and just the way that it's growing, it twists up and basically grew towards the sky. It's on a really steep slope. Darren doesn't look like he's having too much of a problem, but to get down and up that hill is difficult. Blue Lake, north of Elkford once again. This was taken a few years ago when the water level was high. The last couple of years in the spring, there's been a cow moose with a calf, and she's quite aggressive. She tends to stay on the far side of the lake, so as long as people come in and camp and keep their dogs contained, she's not too bad, but they have had to put a couple warnings out. Random wanderings on a trail. Grizzly bears. So last year I volunteered to work with the South Rockies Grizzly Project. And basically what they're doing is tracking grizzly bears through collection of fur to, I guess they do DNA sampling to find out how many females, how many pregnant or lactating females, how many males, and several of them have GPS collars on so they can track their movements and see where they're moving within the southeast corner of BC. There are approximately 400 grizzlies as of last year in this valley area. We tend to get more females with cubs up here compared to down in the Flathead. The Flathead has a lot of big boars that are maybe, a little more aggressive or something like that, and maybe the females feel safer here. And with BC banning the trophy hunt on bears, I think there has been a fairly good increase the last couple of years. I'm hoping that maybe they'll do something similar in Alberta, and some of these bears can kind of roam over there and get the population, going back there again. This was a photo I took a few years ago of probably a 3-year-old cub. There was 2 of them, and I got to watch them for about an hour just playing and doing what bears do. They found remains of an old deer, so they had little chunks of fur and a hoof that they were playing with and such, and I sat a long ways away with a big zoom. These are cropped, and they didn't care that I was there at all. So this is part of collecting fur for the South Rockies project. So basically you have to go in, they have the bear trees set with the barbs, and The video at the beginning where I was singing The Bear Went Over the Mountain was walking into where this tree is located, and it was thick. And it's an area that in the fall you see bears on the slides above there all the time. So making lots of noise, and I thought, oh, what better song to sing, right? So when you collect the fur, it goes in an envelope. You have to label it. They send it for the DNA testing, and from the testing, they can tell, like I said, if it's male, female, pregnant, lactating, so many different things. And they can also figure out from the DNA testing where bears are frequenting and where they're going. This was a video from last year in June, going in to check bear tree route.
Going to check bear rub trees.
Towards Hornaday Pass.
Towards Hornaday Pass. It's a little thick.
I take my husband in that one because I can probably run faster than him. This is one of our game cam videos. We set random game cams out in areas in the bush just to, we don't hunt, just to see what shows up on them. And this is one of the videos. I'd found a roadkill this year and went in and set up a camera. I actually scared 2 bears off it when I was driving by, just down a gas line road. So I went in and set up a game cam just to see what, if they would come back. And this is one of the videos that we got off of it. This bear went on to bite the camera, broke a piece off it, and huffed at it as the night progressed. The bottom of a bear foot. So I've actually printed this and I call it bare feet. Another one of the 2 cubs that were playing in the meadow. And then we move into some game cam footage. So something else I volunteered to do last year, this is all footage from our game cameras, but I also check game cameras for forestry. So they're remote game cameras that are set up in random locations. One we couldn't get to last fall because we had the 1.5 feet of snow and couldn't check it until this spring because you couldn't get back in there. But there's a series of 5 different cameras that I check for forestry, and it's actually curious to see what animals show up on them. This camera was set up on a friend's property just outside of town, and so we knew he had 1 badger, as I'd gotten a picture the year before of the 1 badger. So we'd seen it, went out, set the camera up, and when I went to pick it up, just over a week later, I had over 2,000 pictures on the camera to go through. And I thought, holy cow, like, figured, you know, it had to be either our friend sitting in front of it waving his hand, or that there was, you know, a leaf blowing or trees or something. And we never expected to have a family of badgers on the camera. And I haven't made it out to his place. I've made it out there once, but he's actually got a family with a new baby back there again this year. I saw the kit, but it took off pretty fast. So I'll wait until later in the year when it's a little bigger and they're not quite so nervous, and I can sit there with the camera and see if I can, same thing with the long lens, but the game cam is awesome for setting up and just leaving it there to see what you can get. We found a dead animal this spring. My husband thought it was a moose. At first, it was over a bank, and it turned out to be a horse that had died over the winter. And it was basically a pack horse. So he had been out in the bush his whole life. So they went to take him up, kind of up in the bush, and lost him over the edge of this bank. So when we had seen it down there, we went down and set a game cam up on it, and we ended up having 3 different grizzlies, a martin, eagle, what else, a turkey vulture, and crows that had come down to it. But this guy was just absolutely massive, and he's so beat up and everything, and he would come down the bank and just gorge himself. The other bears would come down, and they were very nervous. You could see them, they would continuously be like looking back up the bank, maybe waiting for him. When my husband had gone in to get that camera, there was actually, the bears had made stairs in the bank going down with their claws. He was pretty nervous going down to get it. Different location, different camera. Got a bull elk, cougar. Same thing, this was a roadkill that had made it off the road, crawled, like jumped over a fence, died in a field. Went out and put a camera out and had a sow and cub come in, 2nd year cub. Lynx. A very curious nosy moose. Wolves. And this actually was in a different location. This was the night before we had gone in to pick up our camera. We set it up up high above one of the mines, and hunting season was starting 2 days later. So we went in to get the camera because we didn't want anybody to run into it and maybe take it or something like that. So we were really, really surprised when we saw this on there. Male, female. And when we went through and looked at the videos, actually these were earlier in the year, and then later on we ended up with this video. So basically what that was, there was an old sock tied on the tree, and it's been there for a long time. That was a trail marker. And when we came up to get the camera, the sock was in the meadow, and we thought, oh great, camera's going to be gone, like what happened? And we were quite surprised when we saw what had actually pulled the sock off the tree. Into some of the other local wildlife in Elkford. This was in the yard next to my daughter's. That's her cat. And there was a doe that had triplet fawns, and 2 of them had gotten into the backyard, and the mom and the other fawn were just over the fence. And her cat Ziggy went over to check them out. They were pretty curious, and he was a little nervous. Young whiskey jack. White black bear. This bear or its sibling is the bear that is now in the Calgary Zoo, unfortunately. There was the mom was brown, there was a black cub and 2 white cubs, and it ended up getting into garbage in town. And because it was white, it was spared from being destroyed and sent to the Calgary Zoo. And this was quite a few years ago, I think probably 6 or 7 years ago. We have deer in town constantly. I'm actually on the Urban Wildlife Management Committee just to try and prevent people from feeding them and try and figure out how to live with them comfortably. This was taken on my front lawn. You have to stop for traffic sometimes. This is a local traffic jam as you're going home. These fawns were born 2 feet away from the road, right across from the campground in town this spring. And we have a Elkford wildlife sighting page on Facebook, and somebody had posted that basically they watched the mom give birth. And I went down and sat across the road with flashers on for about an hour. They hadn't even stood up here yet. She had just basically finished cleaning them just to make sure that, you know, there was a woman coming with a little dog, that the mom definitely would have stomped the dog, and make sure people slowed down and were careful until they could kind of move away from the edge of the road. Coyote. I shared this on my Facebook page and captioned it, "This bike smells like little boy." Little grouse chick. These things are so tiny that I've almost stepped on them a few times in the bush. If you happen to see the mom around, you really have to watch where you're stepping. A male ruffed grouse in the fall, displaying. This is in town again on the hill by our fire hall. There's a herd of elk that frequents on the edge of town, and this bull, the one year I kept trying to get pictures of him because he was very vocal. You could hear him. This was the year that we had the lunar eclipse, and I had gone out behind the fire hall to try and take pictures of the moon, and all you could hear was him bugling the entire time after dark. This is right on the edge of my driveway. He beat up my lilac bush and left. There's a bunch of rams, bighorn rams, that are up on the mine road towards the edge of mine property. This guy actually, oh, I'll talk about him in a minute. In town, a couple of 2-spike sparring. There's that elk again right on the edge of town. And they're actually, they slow down and look both ways for traffic. They're not like deer that don't dare each other to jump out in front of you. They actually take time to look and see if there's cars coming, or so it seems. Goats. More deer in town. This is a bum view. So this guy a few years ago actually was living on the edge of the Green Hills mine property. There's a lot of sheep that live up there. And he came off and went back up to the edge, and he was poached. And he was actually a record sheep, and it all went to court and everything, and Elkford, the district of Elkford, ended up getting the head back, and it's on display in their town hall, or whatever you want to call it, community center now. Nice healthy black bear this spring. This is a fox den that was right up behind my house the one year. we hear foxes a lot, and they would always come to the corner of my fence because I have the dogs looking for scraps and bones and stuff like that. And the one year my husband had gone to work and he's like, there's a fox kid up there. You got to try and get it. So 4 mornings in a row, I would drive up there when I went to work and drive really slow and flip around and see if I could spot him. Just outside of town, roadkill, and this is a juvenile bald eagle on it this spring. This is the field across from our golf course where the elk always used to, or they like to hang out. It's got huge old growth trees there, and they always seem to disappear into the trees in the daytime and appear in the evening. Up towards the mines, there is huge herds of elk. I was actually surprised this spring when I went up. There had to be about 200 elk, cows and calves all over the place. And it's kind of the same thing. They disappear into the trees, and about 9 o'clock at night this spring, you had to slow down to like 40 kilometers an hour or less. They were all over the place. This is right outside of our fire hall. The one year he decided he was going to have a rest on their front lawn. Badger from our friend's property again. Red-tailed hawk. Cow moose. Cinnamon black bear, quite a healthy one. There's those big trees where the elk like to hang out, and a coyote, just to kind of show you an idea of scale, how big they are. You tell me what this picture makes you think of, because I know what it makes me think of. Young moose. This was taken off my steps this spring. This is on the Elk Pass Road that goes north of the Elk Lakes through to Peter Lougheed Park. Another gopher, Columbian ground squirrel. There's another one of the grizzly cub with his hoof that he was playing with. Next door to me. And this one is the big rams up along the bridge on the edge of mine property again. I got this shot was taken this winter, and I'll probably never see that again. Almost done. We're into some random landscape ones. This print was taken, I believe, in 2013. And I've actually sold a lot of this, harebells and daisies and the mountains behind, and it's just stunning. And it was taken with an iPhone 4. So I always tell people it doesn't matter what kind of camera you have. It's, in a sense, how you see the image and, you know, basically what your mind sees, not so much about the equipment you have. This is Blue Lake, north of Elkford this spring, so the water level is very high. There was the cow and calf moose over on the other side, but I couldn't really get a picture of them. This is Lost Lake, just up above the Fording River Mine Road, just above Elkford. And I hadn't been in there for years, and it's become one of my favorite places. You can drive in. It's a rough road. Part of the road is pretty rough. It's literally a 5-minute walk from the road into this. Dragonflies galore right now. There is a loon family on the far end of the lake with some babies that they're not ready to fly yet. Frogs all over the place, the lily pads. And the dragonflies kind of keep the mosquitoes away from you. So it's a beautiful place to sit on the edge of the dock and just relax. This was taken along the mine road, right where the river comes close to it a couple winters ago, minus 30, river just starting to freeze over. In the fall time, we don't get a lot of different colors here for leaves. So if you get anything other than yellow, you're actually really lucky. This is just outside of town, and the poplars that year were just absolutely stunning. This is north of Elkford at a place called Twin Meadows or Kravinsky's Farm. There's a big meadow here, and then the other side is a big meadow that goes alongside of the river. And there's a forestry campsite there. On the other side of these beautiful trees and the Sunstar is our old dump road. It just happened I had gone snowshoeing and snowshoed in, and the light came up and I dropped and laid down and took the pictures and looked over to the right, and there's an old trailer and a whole pile of junk there, but you can't see it in the picture. So this is the lower Elk Lake. So that's the one that is 10 minutes from the parking lot. This is right alongside of the mine road again one winter. Random sunrise, sunset. Probably a sunset because I'm not a really early morning person. This was taken the other night. Comet Neowise on the left and Northern Lights on the right. This was taken north of Elkford, 23 kilometers up, I think. Finally, this is what I like to call Boivin in blue. So it's Boivin Creek running through, minus 30 day. The creek's just about completely frozen over. And in the background is our Wapiti ski hill.